So hello everybody, welcome to this Facebook Live. So we're going to explore what are the signs to look out for that show that you're making progress, and why is understanding these signs important. Alison also saying can see and hear, thanks for letting me know. Maybe also just say where you are in the world, it's always nice to know where people are. So let's start with that second question. Why is understanding these signs important? Well, they're important because Susan's saying her sound has disappeared. I'm hoping that's a problem your end and that it will get resolved, Susan, but other people do let me know that you can still see me. So yeah, if we don't understand the signs of progress, then it's possible that we overlook them. And I've actually seen people misinterpreting those signs of progress. And this means that they end up focusing on the wrong thing. I'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. And what that means is people start generating frustration and despondency, which results in stress. And as you know, stress hinders recovery. So Joe's saying can see and hear. Colleen's saying she's from Sunshine Coast in BC, Canada. And Susan is back with us, so thanks for letting me know. So it's okay to feel stress. It's understandable. You're not bad or wrong if you're experiencing stress, but it's not useful to live there. And that's what can happen, is that people can get stuck in stress, frustration, other strong emotions. And I get it, because I was there at one point. I was constantly in a state of stress, constantly in a state of frustration. And obviously I didn't realise that at the time. And people these days tend to be much more educated than I was when I had MECFS. That is literally hindering your body's attempts to do important healing work so that you can recover. Now, when we get this right, when we're actually able to spot the signs of progress, then we can acknowledge that progress. That makes us feel good, and it makes us more likely to stay focused and take inspired action to help us move forward. So I'm going to share 3 big ideas. The first is that when you understand the signs of progress, then you can focus on the right thing and close the gap between where you are and where you want to be. Secondly, we need to measure process activities rather than outcomes. And I'll explain that in a moment. And it's really, really important to acknowledge small wins. I was watching a video in which this chap, Brian Johnson, who has a business basically reading personal development books and doing philosopher's notes, he calls them, sort of synopses of these books. And one of the books he's talking about psychologist who's saying that it's the small wins and the ability that we can cultivate to identify the small wins and celebrate them that help us move forward. Okay, if we're only waiting for the big wins, then we might not be actually getting into that state of celebration, and that we need to be doing that on a regular basis. Okay, so small wins are important, and they are the key to success, acknowledging them. Now, problem is, if you have a critical voice, a self-critical voice, then you really need to address that, because that can sabotage your success. And I've seen this happen. People have a strong critical voice, and what that means is that they don't acknowledge their achievements. So let's look at 2 hypothetical people, okay? And the first one kind of was me at one point when I had MECFS. So I call this person Stressed Simon. So this person, and this was me, is focusing on the outcome. I'd be saying to myself, I've been doing meditation, I've been doing relaxation, doing guided relaxations, and I'm still not better. And I'd be quite self-critical, when I made mistakes, and I wouldn't focus on the achievements the small achievements because I didn't think they were important. So I discounted them. And as I said already, that results in frustration and stress hinders recovery. So consider also philosophical felicity. Say that a few times. Now, philosophical felicity, is focusing on process. Okay, so she's focusing on doing the things that are going to help her move forward. So what I'd like you to consider is that we can identify signs of progress at every stage. Okay, so first of all, there's the kind of flat battery stage when you're here. Oops, hang on, let's just get a different colour. So you're here. So I'd like to ask you a question, which is, what signs of progress might you be able to identify even when you're in that flat battery crash stage? Pop your answers in the chat. What are your thoughts about that? What I'd like you to consider is that even when you're at that stage, or when someone's at that stage, if we think about Stress Simon, at one point I didn't really have any routines. Okay, compare that to philosophical Felicity, who has developed routines. So even if you're bedbound, there are routines that you can establish that are going to support recovery. So let's say, for example, you have routines for practicing meditation or relaxation. Okay, so at one point when I did get into establishing good routines, I would do meditation, relaxation for 30 minutes twice a day. Okay, and I'd really focus on getting into a relaxed state. So if you're doing that on a consistent basis or working on it, it might be a work in progress, might be a work in progress, then that is just evidence that you're making progress. You're taking positive steps. Okay, so if you have routines for movement, again, if you're feeling poorly, they might be really small routines. For example, you might start by just doing visualization. We know, I've talked about this before, that when we are in a relaxed state and we're visualizing doing physical activity, the muscles get stronger, according to research. So even if you're in a crash, you're bedbound, what would it be like to just spend 1 minute a day visualizing doing some physical activity? You might visualize walking calmly in a relaxed manner to the bathroom. Okay, one thing I started doing at a certain point is every day I would visualize playing a game of tennis. And you might have heard me talk about this before. After a while, I realized I didn't need to lose any points. So I'd win every point. I'd serve fantastic serves, amazing passing shots, and I'd win every point. Okay, and what's really interesting is when I first picked up a tennis racket, and my sister and I played against her son and his friend. Admittedly, they were only 11, but they were pretty good. Actually, my serves were pretty good, given that I hadn't done a serve for about 8-9 years. All right. So consider that, even if you are feeling poorly, you can have really little movement routines that might start with just doing visualization. You then might move on to doing just really small movements. It might be just doing one arm curl, rotating your ankle one way, rotating it the other way. Just doing a little each day, and when you know that your body can tolerate that, then you do a little bit more. And if you keep a record of that, for instance, just put in your diary. In fact, this guy, Brian Johnson, I'm doing his course at the moment, and every day in his diary, he writes down, let's see if I can remember it, this, 1, 10, 1,000. And, no, sorry, 10,000. So 1,000 and then 10,000. So the 1 represents, he does 1 loop of this circuit around his house. Can't remember what the 10 is. 1,000, he does 1,000 rows, and 10,000 is he does 10,000 steps. Okay, so he has this routine. He writes that down on his calendar every day so he can see the progress that he's making. Okay, imagine if you've done your little movement routine every day for 7 days, for 30 days. How are you going to feel? Okay, when you see that, when you see your record of that, it's going to make you feel good. All right. Remember, you just can keep it really small, build up really gradually. I did talk about this, approach to physical activity in a Facebook Live a couple of weeks ago, so check that out. Okay. So you might have routines around building in a little bit of fun and stimulation in your day, even if you're feeling bedbound, if you're in a crash or whatever. Might be listening to an audiobook for a certain amount of time, or listening to a comedy. At one point I didn't look at a television or look at a screen because I didn't have a laptop or computer, and I didn't do that for quite a long time because I just couldn't tolerate it. And even as I started to get better, I noticed that when I was really tired, then there were times when I was quite poorly that actually looking at a TV or screen was quite draining. So I would choose to just listen to some comedy on the radio. And obviously now you've got comedy on tap. If you're in the UK, you can go to, I think it's Radio 4 Extra. They have comedy and you can just listen to shows. So think about that. What are some activities that give you a little bit of fun, give you a little bit of stimulation, give you a little bit of enjoyment that you can do, even if they are for a small period of time? Someone was saying that they do crochet and they were doing just literally a minute or 2 of crochet. So consider that. Again, if you're establishing these routines, a movement routine, a routine for having a little bit of fun, a little bit of stimulation, a little bit of escapism, then that's progress. Okay. So let's talk about the next phase, that you can look for signs of progress when you are in the next phase. Okay. When you're kind of, maybe sometimes you're in that kind of tired, wired phase and dipping in and out of being in a crash, being tired and wired. Maybe you're kind of progressing a bit where you're not feeling great, but you feel stable. Okay. So again, what I'd like you to consider that question: what signs of progress might you notice in that phase? I'll give you a moment to answer. Didn't see any replies from the last time. So hopefully that's not because you're shy. Maybe you just didn't have any thoughts about that. But what are your thoughts as you start to move out of the crash phase and into that kind of orange phase? What signs of progress might you notice? What I'd like you to consider is what people often describe, that they have periods of feeling a bit. Let's have a look. Less anxiety. Yeah, so Heidi says less anxiety. So if you're feeling less anxiety, maybe I'd get you to rephrase that And there's a reason I'm doing that. If you're experiencing less anxiety, what are you experiencing more of? Okay, so let's have a look. Susan says mood lifts a little. Yeah, excellent. Penny says signs of progress for me: might be able to read longer, bit more energy, less brain fog. Colleen says sleeping better, resuming healthy routines, out of bed by 11 a.m, 15 minutes of routine exercise. Heidi says energy. Yeah, and Heidi, I'd suggest maybe you're feeling calm as well. Okay, and Narita's saying increased number of small tasks completed over the course of the day. Fantastic. So what I'd like to consider is, thanks for your replies there. That's really helpful because you kind of added sort of to the conversation. But what I'd like you to consider is that if you have a period where energy starts to build, even if it's only for a little period, then as you've said in the chat, that is a sign of progress. But often what happens is people understand, and again, this is something I did many times, they get some energy, okay, so their level of activity exceeds their amount of energy, okay, so now they had that much energy, but they've use this additional energy here, okay, which means that they go into a dip, okay, and then at that point they are no longer focusing on the progress, the fact that they had some energy during this period. They're now focusing on this, okay. How many people have done that? They forget about the progress, that period where they were feeling okay for a bit, and they focus on this bit here. Oh no, I'm in a crash again. How many people have done that? I'll be honest, I've done it. I did it many times, okay? Now, Susan's saying yes. All right. What we could do instead is recognize that this is a good sign, okay? And actually, we just need to work on this bit of the equation, i.e. the not overdoing it, managing our energy instead of booming and busting, okay? Because when we crack this, when we learn how to listen to our body, pause at this point here, okay, rather than at this point here, then something really interesting happens, okay? The interesting thing that happens is that instead of going into a big dip, we come out of that dip a bit more quickly and we start to have energy. And if we keep repeating that pattern of pausing when we need to, then we recharge more quickly. Okay, and over time our energy can build. Okay, and that's what we want, is to see an upward pattern. Okay, and we're not spending all those periods where we're in that crash phase. All right, but going back to the progress again, if we're recognizing the body, those periods of feeling a bit better is a sign of progress. It'd be lovely if it lasted a bit longer, but that's not the important thing. The important thing is to notice this sign that your body's doing recovery work, okay? Next sign of progress, okay, is that you're in a dip, but you're being kind to yourself, okay? Oops, that's supposed to be a heart. You're relaxed about being in a dip, knowing that you will come out of it. So that is a sign of progress, because the more you're relaxed when you're in a dip, the more energy your body has to do the repair work. And over time, you can come out of that dip more quickly. Another sign of progress is that you've established a baseline. Okay, you've worked out what you can do, and you allow yourself to stay within that envelope of activity for a little while before you build on it. I have created a free training about establishing baselines. If you would like that training, then pop the word baseline in the chat, tag me, and I will send you the link to that training. It'll probably be next week because I've just had to transfer my website to a new platform and having to recreate everything. All right, so but if you pop a message in the chat and tag me or send me a PM, I will send you the link to that training. Okay. Next sign of progress is that you are working on or have broken the pattern of boom and bust and are working on a sustainable approach to activity. Okay, so someone made the comment in my Facebook group that they find it challenging, frustrating to leave jobs undone. And I get that, and we'll talk about that in a bit. The key thing here is cultivating a sustainable approach to activity, to movement, is going to help us move forward for the reasons I've just explained. If we have that sustainable approach, we're using 80% of our energy, and that's the next sign of progress, when we're kind of doing the 80% rule rather than using 110% of our energy. Dr. Sarah Myhill talks about using only a maximum of 80% of your energy. That means you've got 20% of the energy that can be put into repair work, into healing work. So there's a few tips for that second phase. What about phase 3, when we're kind of moving into this area? Okay, what are signs of progress when we're in that phase of making significant progress? I think at the Optimum Health Clinic they call it the reintegration phase. Okay, what are the signs of progress in that phase? So Colleen says it's so hard to know how much energy we have on a particular day. That's very true. Okay, it's not an exact science. It'd be great if we had a way of measuring that. As I was saying that, I was thinking actually there are apps that kind of can give you some information about that, what's going on in your body and stuff. I have no experience of using those apps, and I know some people use them and find that actually hinders things because they're kind of obsessing about it. But for some people it can be useful. So that's one thing to look into. Maybe post something in the Facebook group, see if anyone's got any experience of that. Heidi says, I just realised I have all or nothing thinking. When in a dip, I usually throw everything out the window since I realise I'm already tired and actually push myself more. Interesting. So that's great insight to have, Heidi. It's really important that you recognise that. That is a pattern that I talk about when I train people, because that can keep us stuck. You know, when I used to do hypnotherapy working with people who wanted to give up smoking, that was a lovely example of all or nothing thinking. I'd say to them, have you ever given up? And they said, yeah, I gave up for 6 years. And I say, why did you start smoking again? And they said, I was stressed. I said, yeah, but that explains why you smoked one cigarette. Why did you carry on smoking? And they said, oh, well, I thought I'd failed because I'd had a cigarette. Now, I'd say that's all or nothing thinking, and it's not very helpful. It would have been much more helpful for them to think, I've just had one cigarette, but I've gone 6 years without smoking. That's amazing. This is just a blip. I'm going to carry on being a non-smoker. Okay. So okay, Colleen says her Garmin app is at 5 most days. Lowest it will go. All right. So therefore, I'd be really interested, you know, if I was kind of chatting to you to find out a bit more about where the gap is and where there is scope for closing the gap. Okay, so Joe says next progression, more energy, more activities, dealing even better with crashes, dips. Yeah, exactly. So one of the things, so Penny says, careful of personality patterns also at this stage. Do you want to say a bit more about that? It might be you're talking about something I'm going to be talking about in a moment. So, but do feel free to elaborate. So yeah, just let's picking up on what Joe said. So in that kind of phase 3, then one sign is that you are recovering from dips more quickly. Okay, you have longer periods of feeling good. Okay, and someone mentioned this a couple of weeks ago in the Facebook Live. You have longer periods of activity before you have a dip. And I talked a bit about some strategies for dealing with that, for avoiding having periods where you do activity and then have a crash. But that is a sign that you're getting better. Okay, as Joe says, you've got more energy. And that energy is more consistent. Okay. And you feel more relaxed about doing activities. But I had a client who was in that kind of phase one where she was in the crash phase. One of the things she recognized is that she was generating quite a lot of stress when she went to have a shower. And just by learning to be more relaxed, we did some hypnotherapy on relaxation. She started approaching that activity in a much more relaxed state. And that relaxed approach actually filtered into other areas. The result being that she was able to get out of the house for the first time. She had been pretty much confined to her bedroom and the bathroom, and she was able to walk to the end of the house and go and sit outside, which for her was a massive breakthrough. So let's just say Penny says personality patterns may resurface as we get better, e.g. achiever, so good to be careful, feel calmer at stage 3. Yeah, so you've kind of read my mind, Penny, because the next sign of progress, and this can happen at any phase, is when we are changing some of those behaviors that put us in fight, flight, freeze, okay? And we're actually starting to get into that parasympathetic state. It might be that you're changing the people-pleasing behavior. And what would you say is the kind of antidote to people-pleasing? Pop your answers in the chat. What would you say is a more healthy approach to things than being a people pleaser? Any thoughts? What I would suggest is it's about having a more balanced approach. Okay? Yeah, not worrying about others think. So what I'd say is being calm about what others think and prioritizing self. Okay? Okay? Narita says personal boundaries. Exactly. Susan says politely refusing invitations. Colleen setting boundaries. Alison, believe I am worthy in myself. Absolutely. I'm going to share a little technique for that. In fact, remind me to share Joseph's technique. All right. Before we finish. Okay. Because it's pretty awesome. All right. So yeah, so people pleasing, shifting to having a more balanced approach, having clear boundaries, prioritizing number one, which is you. Okay. Consider the analogy of being on a plane. If the oxygen masks come down, you have to put your own mask on first. Otherwise, you will pass out and you cannot help anyone else. Colleen says self-compassion, acceptance. Exactly. All right. That's really important. Okay. So second pattern that needs shifting, and when we recognize we're moving out of it, is that perfectionist pattern. So what would you say is the antidote to perfectionist and overachiever patterns? Colleen says hold back. Yeah, it's about recognizing that actually the globe is not going to stop spinning if you don't finish that task. okay? And prioritizing yourself, saying, actually, right now, my self-care is more important than finishing that task, is, you know, a massive achievement. Connie says, self-talk, Joe says, drop your standards. Yeah, you know, because perfectionists often have not only high standards, but unrealistic standards, and they kind of squeeze the joy out of life by doing that, okay? So it's recognizing you're able to leave something undone, and it's okay to do that, okay? So you don't have to get everything done. Let's talk about one more. So this has come up. It's that kind of worry monkey, let's call it. Okay, what's the antidote to that? And what is the sign of progress? That's what we've been talking about already. Okay, it's just learning to be cultivating some calm, being present, not focusing on the past, the mistakes, not focusing on the future and making negative predictions, but just staying present. Narita says grounding, getting back in the moment. Colleen says letting go. Penny, let go, cultivate calm. Exactly. So these are all, when you start to recognizing you're making those shifts, these are all signs of progress, okay? And these are all things that are going to support the body's healing, all right? So if you've got any questions, comments, pop them in the chat. Heidi says, trusting it will work out, faith in God. Narita, writing things down, especially before going to sleep. Yeah, that's a great strategy for getting stuff out of your head. I'm a big fan of writing things down, especially, for instance, either if I'm feeling overwhelmed, I had a week off last week, and when I came back to work on Monday, I had lots of ideas in my head, lots of stuff going on in my head. So I actually literally sat down with pen and paper and just wrote everything down that was in my head, and then started to create some order. Okay, and that instantly helped me feel more focused, more clear, more calm. All right. So Penny saying, great tips. Thank you very much. You are welcome, Penny. So, all right. So let's pause there. And if you like, we can finish with a very quick relaxation exercise. And actually, I said I would share Joseph's technique, which relates to something that Alison was talking about. So let me just... So we could either do the flip the switch exercise. If you don't know that, let me know and we'll do that. Or very simple relaxation. So Alison says, this is helping me to see the progress I have made. Thank you. You are welcome. Penny says, great tips. Thanks so much. You're welcome. I'm able to do this except when outside variables interrupt my routine, i.e. family coming for a visit, travelling, etc. Yeah, there's always going to be things that kind of throw things out a bit. And, you know, sometimes you might just choose to go with that and allow it. Alison, Joe saying, me too. Susan saying flip the switch. So I'll do that. We'll do the quick flip the switch. Before we do that, I just want to share this technique that I learned from a chap called Joseph McLennan. He's a psychologist, awesome guy. And this relates to a point that Alison made, which is about believing I'm worthy in myself. So this is what you do, okay? You stand in front of a mirror and you look at yourself in the mirror and you lean forward and you say, you are freaking awesome. It's very American, but I really love it. And it was really, when he did it, we were all laughing. So practice that. How often do you say that to yourself? I suspect not often enough. And so we're going to do the flip the switch exercise, which kind of builds on that. So what I'd like you to do, only if it's safe for you to do that, is to close your eyes. And only if it's safe for you to close your eyes. Obviously don't close your eyes if it's not safe for you to do so. And I'd like you just to imagine there's a thread at the top of your head pulling your posture up. So if you're lying down or sitting, just straighten your posture, chin down. And the second step is just to take a breath in through your nose, as long as it's comfortable to do that. Breathe in through your nose, into your belly, and breathe out through your nose, ensuring that the out breath is just a little bit longer than the in breath. And step 3 is I'd like you to connect to the best version of yourself. I'd like you to consider there's a part of you that has the capacity for calm, for wisdom, for compassion, for kindness, for patience, for acceptance, for trust and faith, and many other qualities that you have. I like to consider that there are times when you've responded to a challenging situation in a resourceful way. Maybe someone came to you with an issue and you just responded in a helpful way and they felt supported and understood. Or it might be a different situation where you just responded in a really useful way. I'd like you to give that version, that best version of yourself, a name. You can call it anything you like. And just say, hi, whatever the name is. I'd like you just to consider how often do you remind yourself that you have got all those qualities. I suspect not enough up until now. I'd invite you to do this exercise at least once a day. And now, as you carry on breathing in and out, being connected to that best version of yourself, ensuring that your out breath is just a little bit longer than your in breath. Because when you do that, you're activating the parasympathetic state. And now step 4 is just to put a smile on your face. Okay? And the act of putting a smile on your face often makes people smile even more. And as you breathe in and out, step 5, with that smile on your face, you're just flipping the switch. If you'd like a copy of that exercise, the PDF, and an audio which you can put on your phone, again, just put the word flip in the chat, tag me. If I don't see it, if I don't get a notification, feel free to send me a private message. Now, we've talked about a lot of stuff in this session. I didn't expect it to go on for so long. Talked about establishing baselines, breaking patterns of boom and bust, establishing a sustainable approach to activity, cultivating more calm so that the body can access a healing state. If you know you need help with all of that, then get in touch. I'll send you the link to a video where I talk about the research that sheds light on the condition and the 9 areas that I focus on when working with someone. So if you're watching YouTube, you can just click the link below and send me a message and request the video. Pop the word video in the message box. If you are watching on YouTube, do like, comment, tell me what you found useful, what are your takeaways. If you're watching now, you can do that as well. And you can subscribe to be notified of more content. And do share the video with anyone who you think might find it useful. If you've got any questions, get in touch. I'll just check the final comments. Joe says, love it. I think that was the Joseph technique. Penny put a smile on the face. Colleen, love this. Best version of your calm, steady version of yourself. Okay, so chilled after that, thanks. You're welcome, Narita. Love to have this advice on phone. You know what? I am freaking awesome, says Alison. You are. Okay, so that's absolutely without doubt, all right? Joe says, thanks, Simon. You are making a real difference to our lives. I was a bit down before this, and now I have a smile on my face. Fantastic. Great to hear. Video, please. So, all right, listen, thanks, everybody, for watching. Thanks for contributing. It makes it more interesting for me. But for now, I'll say bye for now.